In this video, we're talking about the new PS5 update, how Ubisoft wants you to get used to renting games, and how the PS5 is probably losing a huge exclusive. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and this is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. So if you want to keep up to date on all the latest PlayStation news, make sure you're subscribed with your notifications set to all. The first news story we have to cover today is a short one because we got a brand new PS5 update. But while lately the updates that have been coming to the PlayStation 5 have been the classic ones where they say it improves performance and stability on the console with no real actual patch notes, this one does some pretty cool stuff if you're an owner of the Pulse Explorer headset, or you're going to be picking up a Pulse Elite headset when that comes out in February. They're basically giving us features that should have been there at launch, but it is nice to have them there at all. So what you're going to be able to do now is change the equalization on the PlayStation 5, and once you do that, it saves to the headset permanently. So if you use this headset on PC and PS5 like I do, you can change the volume settings and everything like that on your PS5, save them to the headset, and then use them on PC, and everything will be as you left it. It's kind of a bummer that you can only do it on PS5 though. It really does make a better case for the InZone headset if you're someone who switches between the two devices like I do, but having these features there at all is cool. They're also adding in sidetone editing. You can make it so you can hear your voice louder or softer through the headphones. It's like monitoring, and they're giving you the ability to adjust 3D audio. So yeah, I like these headphones a lot. I've had them for about a month now. I use them on my PC and my PS5 and they work great. I just wish that the dongle that they need to use on PC actually was USB-C and not the size of a brick. Like, I feel like I could bust a brick out of my wall upstairs and lay that thing in there and it'll work just fine. I also think they're like vastly overpriced for what they do because the ear tips are okay. I had to find the right one to get the right sound, but the left one just falls out all the time. It's hard to keep that one in my ear, and I don't know if that's because I have two different sized ear canals or what, but the same size tips don't work from one ear to the other with me, and the left one always falls out. So when I use these, I pretty much just keep one earbud in so I can hear the world around me, which means a lot of the time I'm not really using them. So I like them. I think they're overpriced, and they need better ear tip fitting or whatever because they don't really fit in my ears all that well. So this is being released through a regular old PS5 update. All you're gonna have to do is download it, install it, and restart your PS5. I don't know if this is one of those updates that blocks you from using the PSN when you don't install it, but I'm pretty sure it'll do that because they've been doing that a lot lately. All right, next up here, let's talk about this news with Ubisoft because their director of subscription services had a lot to say about the future of gaming, and I'm just gonna be real, it doesn't look good if this is how things shake out. He said, I don't have a crystal ball, but when you look at the different subscription services that are out there, we've had a rapid expansion over the last couple of years, but it's relatively small compared to the other model. We're seeing expansion on console of the likes of PlayStation and Xbox bringing new people in. On PC, from a Ubisoft standpoint, it's already been great, but we're looking to reach out more on PC, so we have opportunity there. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They've got to get comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. As gamers grow comfortable in that aspect, you don't lose your progress. You can resume your game at another time. Your progress file is still there. That's not been deleted. I have 2 boxes of DVDs. I definitely understand the gamer's perspective with that, but as the people embrace the model, they will see that these games exist, the service will continue, and you'll be able to access them when you feel like. That's reassuring. Like, I'm just gonna be real, this is like the most thing I've ever heard from a guy who's defending his job, because I didn't even know Ubisoft had a streaming service, but they call it Ubisoft Plus, and I guess it works like EA Play or any other service, and I'm assuming it's not doing very well because this guy's like publicly complaining that people aren't used to the idea of not owning their games. And like, I'd argue that instead of us having to get used to that, they should get used to actually making games that don't have online always requirements. Like, build out the game and then bake in the online after, so that when my internet goes down, or eventually when Ubisoft shuts off the servers, I can still play the game that I paid at least $60 for back in the day. This just happened with the first Crew game where they took the servers offline. You can no longer play it, which really sucks because I understand that that's an MMO and a lot of the stuff that's handled in that game is in the cloud with like multiplayer or anything like that. But you're crazy if you don't think they could have just put a little time into that and put the races that you do in single player without multiplayer just back onto the map, which is all story delivered on the disc. And that makes it really suck for games like The Crew 2 or The Crew Motorfest, because it's like, I bought those games, I'm really loving The Crew Motorfest, but even though, you know, eventually I'll stop playing it and I won't really care if the servers go off, just the thought in my head that all that content could go away one day, or probably will, because we're talking about Ubisoft, that makes me not want to play it anymore, because it feels like I'm just renting the game from them. And I know a lot of what this guy is saying is being taken out of context because it's mostly about live service, but like every time we hear about live service lately, it's largely negative news. So maybe it's just about time for live service as a concept to wrap up. I think we mastered it back in the PS4 era, where you could have games like Ghost of Tsushima where they got a multiplayer mode after completely for free that had you build up to a raid, but it wasn't like they built the entire freaking game to take advantage of that stuff, right? Like, it was just built after the fact, and it worked just as well as any other live service game out there. It didn't need all this extra bullcrap on top of it, like multiple currencies or like seasons and just like all this stuff that's made to stop you from playing any other game than the one you're currently sinking all of your time and money into. I'm not denying that live services work in some genres, like definitely with racing games, I feel like there's a happy middle ground. Need for Speed Unbound is kind of like where I like it, where it has seasons and stuff, but they're free content drops, and then there's a car pack you can buy in addition to the free content drop. So it's like a little bit of monetization, but a lot of free content, and I think that's cool. Whereas with the Crew Motorfest, it is cool having the summit and everything online, but like if you're gonna do that to the point where nothing is in the actual game and I'm streaming most of it from the cloud and like it's gonna go away one day, I don't want to play that anymore. That just really bugs me. This news story is also coming at a really weird time because we've had all those updates recently about subscription services like Xbox Game Pass. Xbox basically expected it to keep growing and growing and growing, but it seems like, if analysts are to be believed, streaming services as a whole have kind of hit a plateau where the people who want to subscribe to streaming services to play a bunch of games and then pick one to stick with for a while, versus the people who buy games for $70 when they come out and enjoy them and then delete them and move on. There's way more people on the side where they want to buy the games versus play them on Xbox Game Pass. So when it comes to Xbox Game Pass, it could really hurt Microsoft in the sense that like they're putting everything on Game Pass, right? Like everything from Indiana Jones and Starfield all the way down to Ori and the Blind Forest and Hi-Fi Rush. And when you're talking about those smaller games, it's easy to see how they can make back their budgets by having a monthly subscription fee that they charge users, and then that builds up and pays for the games themselves. But when you're talking something like Starfield or Indiana Jones, you know, these bigger budget games, then things quickly get out of control. And I'd imagine that if you're not constantly growing, or if you're losing users at all, that makes it really hard, if not impossible, to actually recoup the budgets on those games. So they'll have to like make sure that they only have one big game like that a year and just fill out the rest of the titles that they're going to put on Game Pass with smaller or AA games. And that kind of sucks as a user as well. So it's like artificially gaming the release schedule so that you can recoup your budget on these huge games because not enough people are subscribing. I am sort of seeing why they came up with this system where when a game comes out on Game Pass, you have the Ultimate Edition you can upgrade to for $30. I get why they did that. I like it, still not a lot. I don't like it at all really, but I understand the necessity of something like that when you're talking about games just being given away on a subscription service. But it's been a good year for me, honestly. Like, cloud gaming seems to be going away pretty quickly. Subscription services have completely plateaued, and Sony is seeing a lot of confidence in games that they just release for $70. And Ubisoft, despite saying these things that they say so authoritatively, the game that they've gotten the most buzz on in a while is just a single player Metroidvania set in the Prince of Persia universe. It doesn't have any microtransactions or DLC or like season passes. It's not a live service in any way. It's on Switch, so you can buy it physically and take it on the go without using the internet, and it's awesome, right? Like, maybe they should talk to this guy and say, hey, stop talking about live service games as if they're the only way gaming is going to advance, because that's clearly not the case. And the third news story is that PlayStation 5 is probably losing an exclusive. So with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth right around the corner, you're probably thinking that Final Fantasy VII Remake might eventually come to the Xbox platform. And I don't think that's going to happen, because the game we're talking about today is Final Fantasy 16. So Final Fantasy 16 is a weird scenario because it came out, it got some pretty good reviews. I would say that it was like below what I was expecting from a game that took as long as it did, with the pedigree of the team that it had, like the combat director from Devil May Cry 5, for example, and the fact that they worked on the story in English first and then translated it to Japanese later. That all kind of was like boiling up for me and making it seem like it was going to be this huge game. And while while it did sell pretty well, like 3 million units in just the first week, Square Enix said it was under their expectations, and it's obvious to see why a lot of that might come down to the fact that it was only available on PlayStation 5. So this rumor is coming from Special Nick, who's really reliable. When he reports stuff, whether it's for Xbox or PlayStation, it almost always comes true, and he's basically saying that he's heard that Sony was given the opportunity to re-up their licensing deal on Final Fantasy 16, which I'm pretty sure lasted around 3 months, and they just said no, which, like, that makes a lot of sense. If the game didn't sell to expectations when it came out, it probably petered off pretty quick in terms of like sales after launch. So if Sony's not seeing an actual return on investment from this game, like the 30% of every copy that they get isn't adding up to pay back that bill that they already had for buying exclusivity in the first place, you could definitely see why they wouldn't want to pay more money to keep it exclusive to the PlayStation 5. The one thing that really bums me out about this game is that they stopped updating it. The performance mode is not very good. It runs at like 40 FPS most of the time, but it's not locked, so it can jump up to 60. And when you're in combat, the performance mode can drop into the high 20s, which just looks absolutely terrible no matter where you're playing it. If they release this on Xbox and it comes out, if they release this on Xbox and it like comes to Game Pass or something because Square Enix wants money, and then they also have a patch that lets it run at 60 FPS, that's going to be a huge bummer for me, because it would be yet another deal where Sony gets the worst version of a game at launch. It happened with Deathloop, it happened with Ghostwire Tokyo. When those came to the Xbox, they had better performance and more updates than the PS5 version did at its launch, which is a bummer because we all paid $70 for those games, and now Xbox people are probably going to get it for free. Honestly, I don't really care if Xbox gets this game. I played it. I thought it was pretty good. I would play it again if it came out on PC though, because I want to play it at 60 FPS, and I'm pretty sure my 4090 could run it at 60. The combat is really good. It's an awesome looking game. I just want to see the icon fights and have them not look like a slideshow. That's just all I really want. But hopefully it doesn't overheat my PC like it did with some PS5s. And the last news story I have for you guys today is more Until Dawn news, because there's even more stuff coming in this game apparently. So we got the news last week that Gary Doberman and David F. Sandberg were teaming up to make a movie out of Until Dawn, and what I said at the time is I hope they just keep 90% of the cast involved, like Rami Malek and Hayden Panettiere. Like, the cast of that game was really good. I just wanted to know if they were going to adapt the entire thing into a movie, or split it up into parts, or leave out some of the plot lines, because if you've never played it, there are a bunch of intersecting plot lines, and some of them are definitely better than others. Like, there's a lot of different villains in this game, and the ultimate villain is by far the best. But if you've never played the game before, it looks like you're about to get an opportunity to do so, because we're not only getting a PC version of the game within the next couple of weeks, we're also going to be getting a PS5 version as well. The PS5 version I'm personally really curious about, because the PS4 version of the game already runs at 60 FPS on PS5 and still looks really good despite being around 7 or 8 years old. So what I would hope they do is kind of increase the textures a little bit, pull in some of the lighting and detail effects from the Quarry, because that game actually did look quite a bit better than Until Dawn, which I know should make sense because it's so much newer than Until Dawn, but still it looked a lot better, and the face scanning was a lot better, like the lip syncing and everything like that. So I'd love to see that kind of backported to Until Dawn for this PS5 release. It is kind of funny that this game is a playable horror movie, so like if they're making a movie out of it and you go to the theater and you see it and you've never heard of Until Dawn and you're like, whoa, that's a video game, I should grab that for my PlayStation 5. Like, all you're really going to get out of it is the exact same story you just saw on the big screen, but I guess it could be expanded because the game is around 8 or 9 hours long. Regardless, I love seeing supermassive games kind of explode into this huge studio. They have games like The Quarry, the Dark Pictures Anthology, which, like, the Dark Pictures Anthology starts okay, Man and Medan, then it gets really bad with Little Hope. House of Ashes was awesome, and The Devil in Me started rough and got good after some patches. So they're on an upswing there. They're making a Dead by Daylight game that's like a playable movie for a new killer in Dead by Daylight, and they have their first game that really put them on the map being turned into a full-on theatrical film and a PS5 release.